place your bets on who you think is going to be this week's finalist. Is it going to be Classic or NightMare? In a PvP, I do think that this is a little bit unpredictable. I think, in general, Classic is a stronger player. I think he has better PvZ, specifically, and even slightly better PvT. But in a PvP, anything can happen. And we saw that NightMare refuses to die, even when everything is up against him. The world against NightMare. He somehow wins. It's crazy. It's crazy. The camels, even. As spawning in the bottom right, top right hand corner of Royal Blood, we have the South Korean Brodos representing Team Arbidos. It is NightMare. And spawning in the bottom left hand corner, we have the South Korean Brodos representing his new team Twisted Minds. It is Classic. See the chat catching up. Oh, Special was off racing. Alright, thanks for letting us know, Thorn. Do appreciate it, But yeah, Special off racing, interesting. Did you take down any big names as Protoss? Not quite. Black and Triple are both more amateur players, but if Special committed and played Protoss against Dark, that would have been crazy. That actually would have been insane. A sight to behold. But yeah, apparently Special did have an appointment, so tis a shame, But we still have some games, we still have some matches ahead of us. Unfortunately, that means that we won't be casting any Terran today, so no Terran available, only Protoss and Zerg. Feels bad, man, feels bad. I guess it's fair. We actually cast a lot of Terran last night. Casted a lot of PvTs last night. No Zergs either. So yeah, we balance, Bobby, balance. As we have some pretty standard openers so far. Double Gate here from NightMare, likewise from Classic. What are the first two units going to be? I'm gonna say Double Adept, Double Stalker. Well, I got half of it right. Both Classic and NightMare are going to be going for double Stalker openers. So nothing too crazy, nothing too fancy so far. Probes just being a little bit annoying across the map, looking to try and get an eye on what initial units are on the way. Ooh, as Classic is locked into the main base of NightMare. With that NightMare, he's going to be able to avoid revealing his hands. Meanwhile, Classic does shoo away those probes, that probe with those two Stalkers. So NightMare, he knows about the two Stalkers. Classic, he only knows about the one Stalker of his opponent. It could have been a Stalker Sentry opener, could have been a Stalker Adept opener. Classic is in the dark, but he will be soon finding out as the armies are about to clash. Oh. Ooh, Classic does manage to get a little bit of a better angle on that fight, but does take a shot towards the end. They both bounce off each other. Let's go. As we have our expansions on the way, Classic just looking to find a really good position here in the center of the map, looking to lay siege upon NightMare if he does move through the center. Likewise, so does NightMare. So again, whoever crosses the middle of the map is going to end up losing the fight, essentially. Oh, as NightMare does back off. So it will Classic. To see shield batteries being set up as we speak. We have sentries as well for hallucinated scouts. For those hallucinations. And now we have our first big divergence, and this is pretty impactful. NightMare is going for a faster Twilight Council to get into Blink Stalkers. Classic, not so much. Classic is going for a much faster Robo instead. Very interesting. We'll see if this is accompanied by additional gateways. We'll see if we commence Immortal production early on as well. Yeah, there we go. The first Immortal is on the way. Classic looking to be very aggressive with this build. Oh, actually cancels the Immortal, going for a Prism first instead. Regardless, wants to be across the map. NightMare still hasn't figured this out, but will in a couple of moments. There we go, the hallucination comes in, gets eyes on the delayed Twilight Council and the faster Robo. With that, he should be taking a more defensive position. Prism is going to be zooming across the map. And NightMare should be feeling pretty good about his own advantage. Like, I can't imagine NightMare moving out without Blink, as there's going to be a pretty big window where he has it, his opponent doesn't. But Depths are going to be threatening the main base. They're going to be lifted up by this Prism and looking to dive into the main of NightMare. But NightMare is in position. Stalkers waiting in the main. Yeah, he's going to be able to shut this down. There we go. Should be able to get eyes on this, and yeah, he will deflect the harassment of Classic. And there's that first Immortal on the way. Oh boy. So again, we've spoken about this before, but Immortals do make up for your like Blink deficits. Even though Classic's his Stalkers are going to be worse, he's going to have Immortals to really round out his army. Third bases are being taken. The Prism does slip into the main base once again. The Adepts do shade, and they do take down 2 of those workers without losing too much. But oh guys, speak to you soon. Oh, the Prism goes down. Big loss there from Classic. The rest of the army rotates on over. The third base is protected, and yeah, Classic has to give this up. With this Immortal, he can take a fight on the high ground, but NightMare can just blink on top of the army. Yeah, he wants that Immortal. The force field does isolate it. It barely does survive. Barely goes down. NightMare taking a massive fight. He's snowballing out of control. His army is being slowed down by those force fields, but he still has more than enough. He takes down all the sentries, takes down half of the Stalkers of Classic. We have another Immortal, but one Immortal on its own. It's looking quite vulnerable, not gonna lie. Overcharge does save it, does keep it alive though. Barely does save it. It looks like Classic is gonna be able to hold on to his at least natural, but I don't know about that third. As once again the Immortal goes down. But NightMare did take a lot of hits earlier, and yeah, now he is being cleaned up. He's got to respect the position of Classic and will eventually pull back. Oh. And after a chaotic moment, Classic does hold, but it was the costly trade, as we saw looking at the units lost tab here. 2 Immortals went down, Stalkers, the Prism of course as well. His robot production was completely reset, and Classic is able to, NightMare is able to get away with a better economy here. Faster saturation at the third. And we are going to be getting into the mid game at this point. Overall, I still want to give a slight army edge to Classic just because he has a higher Immortal count. NightMare is trying to catch up. As we can see, we have our first Immortal for NightMare already. I mean, he is actually just taking up into Zealots at this point as well. Tis pretty neck and neck. Something to bear in mind as well is that Classic is getting to a faster Templar Archive, so even if we have a wave of Zealots, and we do have a couple of Zealots, Archons will completely shut them down. They do so well against Charge Lots in PvP. There we go, High Templar being warped in. First Archon is on the way. It's going to be pretty crucial here in the defense. Again, it's like Classic has a higher technical army. NightMare just has, a larger army when it comes to numbers. It's to say that the army supplies are evening up. Adepts do shade into the natural base. They're forcing Classic to respond. His army getting out of position. Because he does pull back in time. So there's a lot of Zealots, but running into 2 Archons, we'll see how he can do. Shield battery overcharge does get popped, does get focused out almost immediately. Yeah, that massive wave of Zealots that you saw earlier get completely cleaned up. Classic taking a massive fight, gets on top of the army of NightMare, takes down the Prism. NightMare gets forced all the way back. Not just back, oh god, he's bleeding out far too much. Was an amazing trade for Classic with his Archons, with his Immortals. Oh, Again, when the fight started, they were neck and neck in supply. And NightMare just nosedives after that. And now NightMare's in a really rough position. Again, it's almost impossible for him to catch up in the immortal counts. It's going to be difficult for him to catch up in the Archons as well. I do think that he has to rely on these run-bys. Whether it's Adepts, Zealots, Blink Stalkers, he needs to harass and try and pull apart Classic and buy time. Problem is that Classic's main army is just getting like beefier and beefier. It's just so terrifying. Run-by could do some damage, but we force a recall. Natural is saved. They're warping into the main base as well. The Zealots, they get almost nothing done. They get a pylon, and that's it. We need a recall out. We need oh god, this is a lot of minerals. 2 Zealots go down. It could have been worse. Could have been better. As at least NightMare buys time with that. Just trying to build up his army. Heavily reliant on these Zealots. Oh god. But he's up. Look how many Archons we have. 7. Jesus. Unfortunately, I just don't see NightMare's army doing too much here. Going for another Zealot run by, just distracting Classic as best he can. He might force a base trade. Classic did just recall earlier, bear that in mind. I do think that a base trade is maybe NightMare's best chance, but Classic is also moving out across the map. And here we go. The base trade is commencing. NightMare actually going to be pulling back. Uh-oh. I don't know if he can. I'll be honest. Okay, he turns back around. He's going to try to hold on to his third base at least. Meanwhile, Classic dives straight into the natural. Workers going down for both players. NightMare is going to try to come in from behind. But again, he can't. There's just so many Archons and Zealots, they can't do anything. Stalkers trying to chip away at whatever they can. Oh no, not off the ramp. Don't go off the ramp! No! Not like this! Oh my god. So half the Zealots get annihilated almost instantly once again. Classic just taking control of the main base. NightMare trying to get up this ramp. And eventually he will. And here we go, the last ditch effort. He does dive on in. He's trying to get on top of these Immortals as best he can. He will get 1. 2 of them go down. But the Archons are standing strong. We warp in another wave of Zealots. NightMare, he's kind of breaking on through. Those Immortals doing a lot in the backline, but no, he gets cleaned up. GG gets called, and Classic will take game number 1. GG. I liked the idea, but NightMare, he shied away from it. It did look like NightMare was intentionally going for a base trade. The setup was there, you know, he forced the recall earlier. He was already across the map, and then he turned back around. To be fair, like, I do think that Classic had the advantage either way. I do think that whether we committed to the base trade or not, like, I do think that Classic had the better end of it. But I do think that the base trade was the best chance for NightMare. So, GG. GG, well played. Classic does take that first game. Now we're going to be getting into game number 2. Why did they go back? Yeah. I'm curious as to the decision as well. Like, it's very possible that he saw how many Archons and Immortals there were. He's like, oh, I can't kill the buildings as quickly as Classic can, so I may as well turn back around. I would have been okay with him turning around just to protect his third, but he tried to push into his own main, and pushing up that ramp we saw was, it was a meat grinder. Oof. It's not pretty. Not pretty if you're a Zealot. So we're getting into game number 2. don't forget to stretch. As spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of Ancient Cistern, we have the South Korean Protoss player representing Team Abydos. It is NightMare. And spawning in the top right-hand corner, we have his opponent. We have the other South Korean Protoss, the Red Protoss, representing Twisted Minds, leading the series 1-0. It is Classic. And at least in the lead up to the end of the game, it was pretty back and forth, all things considered. NightMare had his own advantages. If you remember, things were popping off where NightMare hunted down the Warp Prism. He was able to catch some Immortals in the middle of the map. Yeah, things were looking pretty damn good initially for NightMare. Things started to take a turn in favor of Classic when it came to the later big engagements. If you recall, they were neck and neck, and then NightMare just rammed his army into the third base of Classic, into Immortals, into Archons, into an overcharge, and that's when NightMare kind of lost his lead. That's when he lost any kind of advantage that he had. His army just crashed into a brick wall and just got annihilated. And after that, it was NightMare playing catch up. You know, he was going for all these run-bys. He was trying to go for these like guerrilla tactics, trying to come back in some other way, shape, or form. Alas, couldn't do so in the end. Was unable to do so in the end. And we'll see how game 2 does unfold. Again, 2 gate openers all around. In game 1, both players went for double Stalker openers. On Ancient Cistern, I expect one of these to go for a Stalker Sentry opener. We'll see. I'd be surprised if we see double Adept. Oh, let's... As we have 2 different variations. Classic does go for the double Adept opener. Meanwhile, NightMare going for a Stalker Adept himself. Very bold here, very aggressive. Very aggressive stuff. Classic actually going to be staying on one base a little bit longer as well. Throws down a Stargate. He's going full hero. Let's go. So again, the Adept is going to be going across the map. The first Stalker does reveal itself here to this probe. So this is looking just like game 1. If you remember, game 1, NightMare went for a double Stalker opener, and he had one back at home to clean up the probe. The other was just waiting in the natural. The Adept of NightMare does bypass the units of Classic. And the reason why I say full hero is that hero in PvPs often does go for Mass Adept Oracle Harass, and that's exactly what Classic is setting up for. It's a way to just get a pretty strong economic lead if you're able to out-position your opponent and out-control. As Classic dives into the main base and he gets full scanning information, he does see the Stargate. And as soon as he does, he throws down those shield batteries. One in the natural, one in the main. We're getting ready for the Oracles. A pretty important scout for NightMare. Pretty damn important. As the Adepts continue to threaten these shades. You love to see it. For those wondering, you can block a shade with your own. So NightMare, he had he had his own Adept shades here just walling off. Up. Beautiful. You love to see it. It's obviously a little bit more efficient because you don't have to cancel your building and waste resources. Okay, do it again. Oh god! Oh, but he does barely miss the... he misses the shade, and 2 Adepts do manage to get into the main base. NightMare a little bit too slow with his reactions, and he's being punished hard for it. 5, 6 probes go down, and 2 Adepts can one-shot a worker, and this is already worth it for Classic. Especially considering that Classic's natural is delayed because of the faster Stargates. The Oracle's looking for more damage. They go for the Adepts. Interesting choice. Shield Battery does keep them alive. Classic is forced back. Oh, Adept's not quite in position. So once again, Classic doesn't quite commit to the shade. This time. As NightMare is moving out across now, he wants to do some counter damage of his own. Oh, and Classic, he's just gonna dive into the natural base. Workers falling left and right. The Oracles do survive. 5 more probes go down. Oof. This is brutal. Like, NightMare has to come back in some way. He's gonna be shading himself across the map as well. He gets 1 probe, but gets a second. It's something. Still not enough to recover. So working towards Blink. Twilight Council's done. Blink on the way for both players. For both of our players. Let's see where we go from here. Yeah, Classic setting up a proxy across the map. He could set up for a 2-base all-in. He still only has 2... Sorry, never mind. Now this makes a little more sense. I was about to say, doesn't he only have 2 gates back at home? NightMare has 2 gates, setting up for tech and potentially a 3rd. Classic has 3. And we should be seeing a 4th across the map. And if we do, this is a 2-base all-in from Classic. There it is. Classic wants to end the game sooner rather than later. A massive stasis trap does go off on these Stalkers. Oh, no. I think it's going to run out before Classic shows up. Yeah, it looks like it barely will. NightMare should be able to save his units. Oh, but does lose one of his Stalkers. Classic barely got here in time. And again, with this proxy location, Classic's just going to keep warping in across the map. Once the snowball out of control, he is setting up for a 3rd base, though, to be fair. He can throw it down if he so wishes. He's got options. Now we're waiting for that gateway to finish up. There we go. There is that 3rd. Did warp in another wave of Stalkers across the map? It looks like Classic is looking to just contain and get further ahead, as NightMare is still stuck on 2 bases. Classic can also get high ground vision if he so chooses. They try to blink into the main, but there we go. He does dive on top of the army, and oh, NightMare out of position. Loses far too much, and Classic, he just goes for the throat instead. Immortal goes down, gets 2-shot, Overcharge gets wasted, and NightMare doesn't have anything left. So Stasis Trap goes off as well. Classic, calm down, Bobby, calm. It's so unnecessary. Oh god. As NightMare tries to come back with his army, tries to hold on with what he has. Classic has so much momentum going his way. Oh my god. GG gets called as every probe gets stasis, and Classic will take the series 2-0. GG. GG, well played. Game 1 was a lot more back and forth. Here in Game 2, though, from the early stages of the game, Classic was getting a lead with his Adept Harass, with his Oracle Harass as well. He was pulling NightMare apart. Initially, NightMare was holding on, but very quickly, things did get out of hand. Things get out of control. And yeah, congratulations. Classic advances on to the Grand Finals. GG. GG, well played. And we have a pretty familiar sight. Classic and Dark, they do face off quite often, to be honest. They not as often as Hero and Dark. Hero and Dark face off every week. But Classic and Dark, you know, not too far behind when it comes to the frequency of how often they play. And this is going to be a fun one. I do believe that Dark has the overall series advantage, but let's double check.